President,
Senator from Illinois.
ask consent the quorum call be suspended
Without objection.
and consent to speak in morning business.
Without objection.
Madam President, I rise to speak about the issue of judicial nominations. Our nation faces a serious problem. 1 out of every 10 federal judgeships is vacant. Yet we continue to see, unfortunately and sadly, unprecedented obstruction from the other side of the aisle when it comes to these nominations. Right now, on the executive calendar of the United States Senate, there are 22 judicial nominations pending. Now, 12 of these 22 were successfully voted out of the Judiciary Committee last year. Last year. 2 of them as far back as October. 17 of the nominees are currently on the calendar. They were voted out with strong bipartisan support. 13 of the nominees of the 22 that are being held have the approval of the Republican senator from the state where the nomination is being made. Despite the fact that these nominations are not controversial, that they passed bipartisan through the Judiciary Committee and out of the committee, they still languish on the calendar because of Republican objections. I know people get tired and say, I wish you all weren't so partisan around here. Well, I hate to give a speech which most will say, well, that's just a partisan speech, but we're talking about nominees that have bipartisan support coming out of the committee with a strong vote being held on the calendar. Despite the fact they're non-controversial, there have been objections to up and down votes. That's all we've asked for. Just give them a vote. It's not right. And unfortunately, it's a new development in the United States Senate. It used to be when a non-controversial district or circuit court nominee was reported out of the Senate Judiciary Committee with bipartisan support, that nominee would literally be approved on the Senate floor, usually by voice vote within a matter of days. Even when there are battles over controversial Supreme Court or appellate court nominees, the Senate never used to obstruct a non-controversial nominee at the same time, especially at the district court level. When President Obama took office, Senate Republicans adopted a new and disturbing strategy. They began refusing to give their consent to schedule votes on almost all judicial nominees. And you say to yourself, well, what is their strategy? It is very apparent. They are praying, of course, that a Republican will be elected president and they can fill the vacancies. So they want them to continue to be empty seats on our judicial courts for the remainder of this year until the election. President Obama's nominees have been subjected to an unprecedented level of obstruction by the Republicans, more than any other president has received. Listen to this, Madam President. President Obama's district court nominees have waited an average of 93 days on the Senate executive calendar between a committee vote and a floor vote. 93 days. How about George W. Bush? How long did his nominees sit on the calendar before Democrats would let them have a vote? 24 days. 93 days under the Republicans, 24 days under the Democrats. President Obama's confirmed circuit court nominees have been forced to wait an average of 136 days for a floor vote. President Bush's circuit court nominees, 29 days. 136 days, way over 4 months, for the Obama nominees, less than a month for the Bush nominees. Overall, at this point in their terms, President Obama has had 131 nominees confirmed at the federal circuit and district court level, compared to 172 for President Bush, 183 for President Clinton. It is so obvious. The Republicans are stopping worthy bipartisan nominees for strictly political reasons. Current judicial vacancies at this point in President Obama's term are 83, nearly double the 46 vacancies in President Bush's term. I know my Republican colleagues sometimes argue that President Obama is too slow to make nominations, but that argument doesn't explain what happens after the nominations have been made, cleared the investigations, cleared the committee, and reached the Senate calendar. Right now, there are 39 judicial nominees pending either before the Judiciary Committee or on the floor of the Senate. Promptly confirming these numbers would bring President Obama's confirmation numbers close to President Bush's. But still the obstruction continues. Some might argue that blocking of judicial nominees is just another one of those silly partisan games in Washington. But unfortunately, this obstruction has real impact across America. There are 35 judicial vacancies that have been designated judicial emergencies by the Nonpartisan Administrative Office of the U.S. Courts. That means the federal courts are so glutted with a heavy workload that their failure to fill the vacancy makes it even worse. It means that justice will be delayed. And when justice is delayed, many times it is denied. When a court system suffers for lack of judges on the bench, the administration of justice suffers at every level, criminal and civil. All Americans rely on the federal courts to protect our constitutional rights, keep dangerous criminals off the street, and resolve our disputes. When judgeships are vacant and judges remain overburdened, the American people may be denied their day in court. Right now, the Northern District of Illinois, that would be Chicago, Northern Illinois, is one of the districts where a judicial emergency has been declared. The chief judge of the district, Judge Jim Holderman, an appointee under a Republican president, recently sent a letter to me and Senator Kirk, my colleague, urging the Senate to move quickly on two nominees sitting on the calendar. John Lee, my nominee, approved by Senator Kirk, and Jay Tharp, Senator Kirk's nominee, approved by me. Bipartisan selection committees chose these nominees, and both of us signed off on them. Isn't that what America wants? That we work together on these things? So why are they sitting on the calendar? There's an emergency in the Northern District. The judges asked for help. We've agreed on a bipartisan basis how to fill the vacancies, and yet they languish on the calendar. I want to take this opportunity to briefly talk about these nominees, caught up in this backlog on the Senate floor. Both of them are extraordinarily well-gifted and talented. John Lee is currently a partner in a major law firm in Chicago where he practices complex commercial litigation. He's the son of a coal miner and a nurse. He immigrated to this country from Korea at a young age. From humble beginnings, he went on to attend college and law school at Harvard. He then worked as a trial attorney in the Justice Department, and he had a great record in community service in Chicago. When he's confirmed, he'll be the first Korean-American Article III judge ever to serve in my state. Jay Tharp, who's Senator Kirk's nominee that I approve, is a partner in another major law firm in Chicago, where he leads their securities litigation practice. He's a former captain in the Marine Corps with a distinguished military career. He attended Duke University and Northwestern Law School and clerked for a federal judge in the Seventh Circuit. For 6 years, he was an assistant U.S. attorney, a prosecutor, and he's received numerous recognition for his work in private practice. As part of our bipartisan selection process, Senator Kirk has chosen Jay Tharp. I have chosen Mr. Lee. We've done this in the most cooperative way possible. I think it's time for the Senate to move ahead with the floor votes on these two nominees and all the nominees. If a senator has an objection to one of these nominees, let's call it for a vote. They can vote no. And if they don't get a majority vote, they won't be approved. That is the way the chamber is supposed to work. Good, decent Americans like John Lee and Jay Tharp shouldn't put their lives on hold when they have volunteered to be nominees to the federal court. In most instances, those who step up and ask for this opportunity at public service are actually taking a cut pay from what they could be paid in private practice. They're willing to make the sacrifice. Their families are willing to make it. But now we leave them in this limbo. They are caught in this political limbo created by the Republicans in an effort to stack up judges like Cordwan on the calendar in the hopes that come November they'll get a Republican president who will fill these vacancies with the true believers. That isn't fair. It doesn't reflect the reality that President Obama was elected to serve and to fill these vacancies in a meaningful way. The process is bipartisan. Certainly the Senate consideration of these nominees should be bipartisan as well. Madam President, I see the senator from Michigan on the floor, and I'd like to make one additional statement placed in a separate place in the record, if I might,
without objection,
to an issue in my home state of Illinois. And I'll be very brief, but it's something that means a lot to me and to my state. Madam President, it was just about 10 days ago that a tornado struck Harrisburg, Illinois. This is a picture of some of the devastation. It doesn't tell the story. I've been a child of Illinois and grew up in what we consider to be Tornado Alley all my life. Being dragged out of bed in the middle of the night with the air raid siren blaring by my dad to head down to the basement was just one of the rites of passage. Luckily, our home was never hit, but we saw a lot of homes that were. And they might have some shingles torn off and some siding ripped away, some windows broken, maybe in the worst case, a roof actually lifted off the house. But this case here was an extraordinary one. The picture can't even depict the story. It was a level 4 tornado, and level 5 is the highest. 175-mile-an-hour winds were winds more powerful than Hurricane Katrina. And it hit this little town of Harrisburg, Illinois, and about 20 miles away, the town of Ridgway, Illinois. I went down and took a look, saw homes that had been torn off their slab foundations and tossed around like toys. 7 people died as a result of this tornado. There might have been more, but it was a tornado that struck at about 5 a.m. and many people were home. Had they been outside or shopping in one of the malls that was just obliterated, many more people would have died. But fortunately, more didn't. The heroic efforts by the local people at every single level really made me proud to represent that state and to be, at least in my family, to have roots in that part of my state. It was a great outpouring of caring, affection, and even bravery as people rescued those who were lost and covered by the debris. The Red Cross was on the scene right away. The Illinois Emergency Management Agency was there as well. Everybody pitched in, both in Harrisburg and in Ridgway. We finished our job, and we heard as I was leaving on Saturday, this was 10 days ago, that the federal agencies were on their way this last Monday, a week ago today. I felt confident, Governor Pat Quinn of Illinois felt confident, and our State Emergency Management Director, John Munkin, also felt confident that we would get federal designation. That is why it was absolutely stunning when we learned yesterday that FEMA turned down these communities. Take a look at this shopping center. I stood by this shopping center. It literally collapsed. Fortunately, no one was in there at 5 a.m. That kind of devastation from 175 miles an hour winds could be seen all over Harrisburg and in the town of Ridgway, where the local Catholic Church was devastated. This decision by FEMA is out of touch with reality. The reality of the damage and the suffering and the reality of this notion that somehow the state and local governments can take care of this. Historically, we have said that when a storm reaches a certain threshold of damage, the federal government steps in. In my time in the House and Senate, I have never, ever questioned that decision. I have stepped up to help every state in the Union with disaster assistance, knowing that this could happen to my state. And now when FEMA says we don't qualify for federal assistance, it means that the Small Business Administration is not likely to help businesses in the area with disaster recovery small business loans, for example. As you can see from the photos that I've shown here, disaster loans are going to be desperately needed by businesses in the area. Harrisburg is going to have a difficult, if not impossible, time coming back from this disaster without help. And our state of Illinois can't do it on its own. Governor Quinn and John Munkin have determined that the damage is just too severe for the state to take care of it. I spoke with the governor this morning. He's going to appeal the FEMA decision. We're joining him. On a bipartisan basis, Senator Kirk's office is joining our office to appeal this FEMA decision. Come Wednesday, in my office here in the U.S. Capitol, we're inviting the administrator of FEMA to come in and make the case as to why this devastation doesn't warrant federal disaster designation. 16,000 people in these small communities have been displaced from their homes. Local leaders and volunteers have turned up from everywhere, but they can't do it alone. We need to have the federal government providing its level of assistance to make sure that these communities are made whole, put back together again, and life goes on. We can never, ever replace the 7 lives that are lost, but let us replace the spirit of those communities with a federal, state, and local cooperation. Madam President, I yield the floor.
Madam President.
The senator from Michigan.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Before I speak about an amendment that I have in the transportation bill, I just want to commend my friend, the senator and our leader from Illinois, for fighting for his people. I understand what it's like to have devastation happen in your state and want to thank him and let him know I'm certainly people of Michigan certainly stand with the people of Illinois and want to be supportive at a time something like this could happen to any one of us. And so thank you for being such a champion for the people you represent. So, Madam President, I rise today to urge my colleagues to support an amendment that will be coming up tomorrow for a vote, a very important amendment for the economy. It's my amendment 1812 that would stop a tax increase on American businesses that are creating clean energy jobs by extending the energy tax cuts, the energy tax credits that have been so important to stimulating the diversity of opportunity for us in terms of energy sources, and things are beginning to move. It would be such an error to stop or slow this down at this point. We have right now over 26 different national organizations who have endorsed this, and more are coming. But let me just mention a few: the National Association of Manufacturers, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, the American Wind Energy Association, the Solar Energy Association, the Alliance for Clean Energy, Biotech Industry Association, Renewable Fuels. It goes on and on. A number of folks that understand this means jobs, including the United Steelworkers and also the Propane Gas Association, National Electric Manufacturers, and National Wildlife Association, Sierra Club, League of Conservation Voters. The list goes on and on and on. This is something with broad, bipartisan industry, workers, those that care very much from an environmental standpoint about what's happening to our country, all have come together to support this amendment to stop a tax increase on our businesses that are creating jobs through clean energy technologies. All across the country, businesses big and small are creating jobs and bringing manufacturing jobs back to America, building the technology that is powering our future. And we all understand that part of the next round in terms of growing a strong economy really is around energy, all sources of energy. I'm a let's do it all person, but we've got to make sure that we have energy choices and opportunities for those businesses to grow. We have entrepreneurs inventing new technology, building plants, hiring workers, producing cutting-edge new products that save consumers money, and importantly, reduce our dependence on foreign oil, especially now when gas prices are going through the roof. And believe me, as I drive around Michigan, looking at the gas pumps, it's outrageous what is happening right now. When families are struggling more than ever to fill up the tank, we shouldn't be raising taxes on the innovators and the job creators who are helping to lower American families' energy bills. And that's what the vote tomorrow is about. My amendment does a number of things. It extends current policy that's put in place, this new ability to create jobs, energy, get us off of foreign oil. It extends this extremely successful advanced energy manufacturing tax credit that has been called 48C. This is something I was proud to author along working with our chairman of the Energy Committee, Senator Bingaman. We have 43 states where businesses have been able to get a 30% tax cut for companies that expand, re-equip, and build new plants in the United States to produce clean energy technology. You know, Madam President, I want to see Made in America again, and I know you do too. And this tax cut is what is helping to make that happen. In Michigan, a number of innovative companies were able to use this tax cut to create jobs building amazing new products. Just a few examples. Dow, I was just with the CEO today, who is someone so focused on sustainability and creating energy alternatives. Dow is building solar shingles, among other things, along with new advanced battery technologies. But the solar shingles are really something to see. It's called the power shingle, and you put them on your roof just like a regular shingles, and you roll it out and install it just like regular shingles, and they generate electricity for your home or business. New technologies that are creating opportunities for suppliers and small businesses all around the Midland, Saginaw, Bay City area in Michigan. Venn Tower Industries builds huge towers for wind turbines. They just opened their plant down in the southeastern part of Michigan, in Monroe, Michigan, and they expect to build as many as 250 wind turbine towers, the big towers, every year. And on the west side of the state, Energetics Composites used to manufacture luxury yachts, and they've turned their facility and the big bays that made those yachts, thanks to the 48C manufacturing tax cut, into a facility that is now producing wind turbine blades and other advanced materials. My amendment also extends the tax cut for companies that provide energy-efficient appliances and grants in lieu of tax credits, tax cuts for companies that install charging stations for our new great electric vehicles, tax cuts for companies producing the next generation of cellulosic biofuels, and much, much more. It also extends the extremely important production tax credit. This tax cut for wind energy, which supports businesses and utilities that produce electricity from wind. There are more than 8 million households in the United States that rely on wind energy for their electricity. In South Dakota, in Iowa, more than 20% of their electricity is generated by wind. Nationwide, more than 500,000 jobs are related to wind energy production so far. In my state of Michigan alone, there are 31 facilities manufacturing components for wind energy, and 6 more in the works. And I might just add, one of those great big wind turbines has 8,000 parts, and we can manufacture every single one of those in Michigan. When I look at the opportunities around new clean energy manufacturing, I see jobs in every single part for wind, for solar, for electric vehicles. Any of the areas around clean energy create thousands of jobs. And it really is about the future. Now is not the time to raise taxes on these companies. And if we do not extend these tax cuts, that's exactly what is going to happen. Madam President, our economy is slowly coming back, as we know. And manufacturing and clean energy business owners have been leading the way. There are nearly 2.7 million people whose jobs depend on this new part of our economy, the clean energy economy. These are good jobs. This is part of moving our country forward so we can compete successfully in the global economy and keep jobs here. Right now, we are in a race with China and Germany and other countries that want to lead the world in clean energy production. And they have made clean energy manufacturing a top priority in their tax policy, in their investment strategy. And we know, in fact, in China alone, they are spending hundreds of millions of dollars every single day trying to beat us in the clean energy production business. We should not turn our backs on the American businesses who are fighting to compete with countries like China. We should not turn our back on the millions of people whose jobs depend on the strength of these businesses. We should not turn our backs on the opportunity to truly diversify our energy sources so that we can get off of foreign oil and not have to worry about what that price sign is at the pump. I would strongly urge my colleagues to join together in this amendment, to support it tomorrow, to provide certainty for our businesses and our job creators. This has wide backing from business, from labor organizations, from the environmental and clean energy community. It's really a chance to come together and create some certainty for a very important and exciting new part of our economy that is critical for us as we climb out of this recession and create jobs for our American citizens. Thank you very much, Madam President. I would suggest the absence of a quorum.
The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Akaka. Mr. Alexander.
Majority Leader.